Welcome to the Susan Sly Project, where entrepreneurs rule, startups launch, and the side hustle becomes the main hustle. Ladies and gentlemen, your host, Susan Sly.
So influencer culture is a huge thing, and there are different levels of being an influencer. There's, that person who's kind of thinking that it might be cool. I know two of my kids are thinking this way. They're 11 and 15. And then there's the full-blown influencers who get to do this full time and really inspire and touch people's lives and work with brands. So my guest today is an incredible founder. She is the founder of Obviously, which is in my research, it's the premium marketing agency that connects influencers with brands. And over the last 7 years, she's grown this bootstrap company to get this a $10 million annual run rate. And if you know anything about Silicon Valley, once you start getting to that $10 million a year, you're not quite the unicorn, but you're a lot closer than most people ever get. And Mae Karwowski is a phenom. So Mae, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Susan. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, Mae, I want to just ask you first and foremost, the influencer culture is really interesting, and a lot of brands haven't even embraced using influencers to market them. And could you let's just right out of the gate, why should a brand be considering influencers to promote, their company?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Now there are so many social media, there are so many people on social media who are spending hours a day across Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and they follow and really care about people who create great content, and they genuinely care about the recommendations those people talk about, and they care about the brands that they talk about. And we see time and time again that we can really affect sales by pairing up the right brand with the right influencer, and then having that influencer talk about it to their audience in a way that's really authentic and true to them. And yeah, it's really the fastest moving, fastest growing part of marketing right now.
It's interesting because from that vantage point, there are a lot of companies that are a little outdated, and they seem to think that the concept of using influencers is really only if they're targeting a very young audience. And could you just dispel this myth right away?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think that, people think about, oh, TikTok is for young people. And it's like, actually, my mom has influencers that she looks to. She follows certain people on Instagram. She looks things up on YouTube. Everyone has people that they look to for recommendations, whether it's like your popular best friend who is just on Instagram and looks fabulous all the time, or it's someone who you don't know, but you follow them day in, day out for their recommendations on a given niche. So yeah, a lot of young people are on their phone 24/7. So they're like the prime audience, but we have a lot of clients who are, it's skincare for, an advanced woman. And so we're finding really cool influencers who are, 60 to 80 years old. Like, that's awesome.
Let me ask you about that, because, when you say an influencer who's 60 to 80 years old, we're talking about someone like, I'm going to be 50 in 22 months. So we're talking
You look awesome, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I was like the OG health and wellness coach on the internet in 1995, just after the internet started, and had Andrea Lake on my show. She was the founder of Sticker Junkie and 14 companies, right? And Andrea and I are laughing because we're close in age. And she was like, yeah, I was on the internet in 97. And we're like, ha, ha, ha. Like, who was? So when you just say casually, the influencer who's 60 to 80. So there's hope for me, right? In 12 years, I could be an influencer. Let's talk about older influencers, because for me, it's really exciting. And it's such a strong belief I have that anyone can be an influencer, like someone who is credible. Would you speak right now to that person who is maybe over 50, that there's hope for them to possibly become an influencer? How would they go about doing that?
I'd go actually a little bit further. I don't know if there's a study that says, what's the best demographic to make it as an actor, as a parallel, is the 55 plus year old man, because there's so much fewer competition. And so if you're just there as an actor showing up again and again and again, there are the roles and there are not enough people to fill the roles. The same thing is happening with influencers. We have so many brands who would love to work with an influencer who's 60 plus years old, and there just aren't enough influencers out there who are comfortable with I mean, it's a lot. It's a learning curve, definitely. But I would say if you're interested in it, and you've been on Instagram, you've been on YouTube, or TikTok is a great place to grow your audience super quickly. And there are a number of really cool, senior citizens on TikTok who actually have huge followings. I would really encourage you to, take the plunge and start creating that content, because number one, you're going to have less competition. And two, people really want to see that, and they want to see a new, different viewpoint. So yeah, I'm very pro, let's widen the definition of influencer. It's not just the 21-year-old girl who lives in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's a whole other story. My daughter's boyfriend came out of an influencer house. So if people don't know what that is, that's it's an incubator house where you might get young people who are 16, 17, 18, and all they're doing is producing content. They're sometimes managed by an agency. So he came out of a house like that, with some other influencers of his age. And so I know a lot of people think about that's what an influencer is. I know someone who's going to be listening to this, Mae, and she's in her 60s and she has a chocolate business in Vermont. And the chocolate business is Lady Kane's Chocolates, and she makes custom chocolates. And my daughter is a TikTok influencer in the automotive space. So firstly, she's a woman in the automotive space. She just got a huge brand deal, and big companies, car companies, pay her to do TikToks on their pages, right? So she's coaching this lady, Barbara, who is in her 60s with the chocolate business. If you could give advice to Barbara, who's new to TikTok, what advice would you give to someone like her?
Food accounts do so well, especially tasty, gorgeous looking, chocolate desserts. Yes, look up what's happening in the food space. Look at the TikToks that are most popular. I think it would surprise her how just doing her normal day-to-day baking and creating desserts, you don't need to have a crazy narrative. You don't need to dance. You can literally do what you do every day. And maybe it's just shot in an interesting or sped up fashion. But I mean, those cake videos are so huge. I think that there's a really big potential for that. Food is actually a huge category across social channels. You look at, say, BuzzFeed, their most popular channel is Tasty. It's always food. People love to watch it. People love to learn how to make it. And it's just, there's something really fun and almost cathartic about watching someone make a beautiful dessert or a beautiful meal. So I would definitely recommend that she get into that.
That's awesome advice. And that's one of the things that my daughter is trying to coach her, because she loves her chocolates, by the way. So, she's like, just, you making these custom chocolates, just have those videos. If someone has a niche like that, let's talk about hyper verticalization, because there are generalists and specialists. And one of the things I've always said is, if I had to have heart surgery, I'm going to a cardiothoracic surgeon. I'm not going to a GP, right? Yep. In branding oneself, what is your opinion? And you're obviously an expert because you develop so many influencers. What's your opinion in niching down for your target audience?
Yeah, I think it's really important to pick one niche or one or two and really start there and really focus in. I know I listened to your the podcast you did with your daughter Avery on really going into the cars and car TikToks. And it's if you are looking for exotic, really cool cars, and I come across a channel that is all about really cool exotic cars, I'm following it and I'm going to watch it every day and I'm going to tell my friends. And so I think that that is something that's really easy to follow and grow an audience, compared to if only 1 out of every 10 posts is about cars. I know what I'm looking for. And when I go and see that, I'm much more likely to follow, to engage with it, and to share. So I think really finding a niche, and you can always broaden and diversify later once you have a really core, passionate audience. And we see that a lot with influencers. They grow to 20, 30,000 followers, and they start to be oh, people want to know more about me and not just about baking, for example. So I'm going to include a little more content about my life, my personal life, or other activities I like. I'm going to see how that goes. And it's a lot easier to diversify but you really can't niche down after you start going really broad. So I would say start with a niche, see if it goes well, see if you're getting traction, and then don't be afraid to like experiment and try potentially another niche or even start another account. So yeah, I think that's really great advice.
I love that. And it's so interesting, like being the agent stage that I am, because Andrea and I spoke about this too. Like, that when I started on the internet, I was very nichey, like the, health, that kind of thing. But it's not that it never stopped being a passion, but it's still very much part of who I am and part of my brand. But where that really evolved to was women founders and in this whole concept of the guts that it takes to start a business. And I learned this from Jack Canfield, because Jack and I were having a conversation, and he said, if you don't know who Jack Canfield is, he co-wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. I had Mark on the show not long ago. They sold 500 million books, so they're in the book space. And I know you do.
Oh yeah. I was like, they're a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Interestingly, Jack said, if you had told me, Susan, that I would still be talking about the success principles 10 years after I wrote it, it would be crazy. Or if you look at, I know Robert and Kim Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And one piece of advice, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, is you better damn well be passionate about it.
Yep, definitely. No, I think that's so true. I think that, I think there are some people who are just passionate about building a business, and they really could, pick, it's like a landscaping business, or like they could pick anything, and they love the dynamics of it and figuring out the puzzle of it. But I think like for me, I just wake up every day and I'm like, oh, I wonder like what's new on the internet? Like, what are brands going to want? How do we create more opportunities for influencers? I was just on a call with my team before this, and we're like, hey, we did a survey and we saw which beauty TikTokers, they all submitted ideas to work with a huge brand. And I was like, let's go through all those ideas. Let's pull out the trends. Let's see if they're different than last week. Like, and I genuinely really want to know the results. And so I think that really keeps you going when like, you have a hard day, or you're low on energy or low on sleep. If you have that passion, that just helps you push through the harder times, it makes it a heck of a lot easier.
I love that you mentioned that, because it's so Avery, you mentioned Avery. So the one video she did for a client is of a luxury RV. And the video is really interesting because in 24 hours on TikTok, it got 1.2 million views organically. Within 7 days, it was over 4 million views, and the thing is still going.
Yep.
And so, and she loves animals and she loves cars. Like those are, and food. She loves food. And she grew an Instagram page and sold it. It was the largest food page in Arizona on Instagram.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she's now like, but cars. So she's running on Instagram. She's running pages totaling 1.2 million followers. And then TikTok, she's working with this client. And it's so funny. We'll be driving. You mentioned passion, Mae. So we'll be driving. She's like, oh, there's a McLaren. And that's the year is, and I'm like, how do you even know this? And I'm like, that's my kid. How cool is that? And I love that you mentioned that about passion, because one of the things that I see, and I would love for you to weigh in, everyone thinks they're a life coach. And so I'm actually a certified coach, but I don't talk to clients one-on-one. But there are a lot of people who think they're a life coach and they're going to tell people how to become millionaires, and they've never made over $1 million a year. Let's talk about the ugly side of influencers who are kind of putting themselves out there disingenuously, because I'm sure you see that all the time.
Definitely.
Like I'm a baller, but I rented this car, and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or like there's a kind of famous now, actually, like it's a stage of a private plane in LA that you can like rent by the hour and take photos in to pretend you're in your private jet. It's like, okay, guys, this is not, I mean, the thing is, I think there's so much opportunity right now. And, like, I love the example of just growing this RV page on TikTok so quickly. And there were like moments of opportunity where you can just get in at the right time And like that growth might not be there in 4 years. It won't be there in 5 years on TikTok. And that growth existed on Instagram 5 years ago, and it existed on YouTube 8 years ago. So I think really being able to find those pockets of opportunity is super important. But back to your question about, poor influencer behavior. I think since it is so new, and so there is such an opportunity, and someone can just catch a break, can grow to 200,000 followers, and now are being approached by brands who are, paying not small sums of money to work with this person. A lot of people just kind of got thrust into a spotlight and had no real understanding about the responsibility that comes with that. Because they were like, oh, I literally grew from 0 followers to 200,000. And now I have brands who want to pay me, tens of thousands of dollars to work with me on one post. I think since it is such a new space, that's kind of like the perfect scenario for people to kind of go the wrong direction. So we're really all about making sure that we have the right brands working with the right influencers. Everyone knows all terms up front. Everybody feels comfortable with it. If the influencer doesn't like the product, doesn't love the product, we tell them, don't work with this brand. Like, you're going to erode your audience's trust so fast, because audiences are really smart now. I'll be scrolling through Instagram and I'll be like, that is a terrible sponsored content post. like she clearly does not love that like teeth whitening, like contraption or whatever, and people turn, and we can literally see it in the data that like people's audiences will just tank or they'll stay high, but the engagement plummets. And it's not sustainable for a career. So I really advocate for influencers to really only work with brands they truly love, because their followers are going to see through it at some point.
Yeah. And it goes back to that authenticity piece, right? Like we'll use an example, Jeffrey from JR Garage. So JR Garage on YouTube, I think they have 1.3 million followers. They have a very robust Instagram. Jeffrey, he eats dinner at my house, right? And so he loves cars. He's 21 years old. And he has, I've been to them, 2 warehouses, Mae, full of cars that he bought for cash. And he even gives cars away annually to kids. Like, it's very cool. But they started that YouTube channel in high school. And he just so genuinely cares about his fans. He'll have fan meetups here in Scottsdale. And I always look to Jeffrey, in terms of influencing done right. And his side passion, which we'll talk about diversification in a second, is numismaticism. So if he comes, and you're invited to my house for dinner, it's like fun. It's like, once a month we have these deals. And you can pull out any bill and show it to Jeffrey and just the serial number, and he knows what year it was made. So he started on TikTok an edutainment channel where he's teaching kids how to find the real value of money. And so then he'll like answer their questions and engage and stuff like that. So starting in the car space, and then, doing the edutainment with the numismaticism. And that's what I want to ask you. When is it a good time for someone to diversify? So let's say they have 2 passions, right? Like, how long should they spend really cultivating one before they start to add to that second?
Yeah, so I think it's really about, I think this is a great question, because it really speaks to how are you setting up your career as an influencer, and how are you approaching it strategically? And you really need to get a process in place once you start seeing traction. So I would say, like, really focus on that one thing you're doing that's working really well, and then figure out, okay, how do I get this thing on rails? How do I get this thing moving with a little bit less of my effort, so I can now take some of that effort and diversify my time? A lot of people forget to actually put that process and that structure in place, and make sure you have people you're working with who you really trust, who are doing an awesome job, who are like, quality doesn't dip, and you're making sure that the thing you were doing right continues to go really right before you then get into the next thing. And this is something that I honestly have learned the hard way. I think I'll get excited. I'll hear a really cool idea. I'm like, oh, we should definitely do that. And then I'll start talking about that, and then start putting a plan in place there. But it's like, then I have to catch myself and be like, okay, you can do that in 6 months once you hit these 3 milestones with what you're currently doing, because it can get really exciting and people come to you with cool ideas, and some people are really motivated by great ideas, and that's totally how I operate. But you need the process in place to make sure, like, so a good example is with this JR Garage account, is this going well? Am I able to like create content and push it out on a schedule that I want to? Is the quality remaining the same? Is my engagement rate staying the same? Is my audience growing? Okay, cool. Now I really feel like I can move on to the next project. Because what happens more often than not, especially for people like, first timers, is that they just move on to the next thing, but their winner, their like cash cow, starts to really tank because they're on to the next new thing. But it's like only a tiny baby of an idea, whereas you're kind of giving up the cow for the tiny new idea that you need to really grow. So I'd say that's hugely important.
I think that answer was like a book, really. Like I love Mae what you spoke
jumped
about.
around with some metaphors, but you know what I'm saying.
the process, because when Jeffrey was on the show, he was talking about his content creation process. And if you look at one of the JR Garage videos, and he redeploys the content across TikTok, Instagram, and so on, there is a process. So there's the shoot, there's the sort of storyboarding the shoot, the edits. And then the other thing he does on Sunday when they upload, he has a bunch of his influencer friends that when there's a new episode, they all share to their stories and things like that. And I love what you said. Once you get a process and it's really working, it doesn't mean you won't have to refine it as things change or you go on different platforms and stuff, but it's that process and it's work. And then you might go along for a long time before anyone knows who you are. So let's talk about Lily Singh. For 4 years, girlfriend creates 4 YouTube videos every week on 2 channels, and no one knows who she is.
Which is so much work. Like, I don't think people realize it's not just sitting at a camera for 30 minutes. It is like hours and hours and hours of work.
Yeah. And then, and if someone doesn't know who Lily Singh is, obviously you do. She went on to, I think her biggest year on YouTube was like 12 million. She was the highest paid female YouTuber. And then she just got a major network deal, but 4 years. And let's talk about people who are, wanting to do this, but not willing to go so long without anyone not really liking their posts or commenting their posts. A lot of people give up. Like, I wouldn't want Barbara, the 60-plus-year-old chocolate maker, to give up. It might not be her first 25 chocolate videos that get the traction. It might be the 26th one. But can you talk about the long game?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you'd be surprised by the number of emails that obviously gets daily. That is from someone who says like, hey, usually a really nice email. I really want to be an influencer. Here's what I'm good at. Like, can you help me do it? And then we'll go to their account and they have 400 followers. They've posted maybe twice. And I'm like, it takes, and that's such a red flag, because it's like, no, it really takes hard work and dedication and consistency, and we can help you. But if you don't have that, you don't have the drive and you don't have the ability to like continually put out that amount of content, which is really hard. And I think a lot of people underestimate how hard it is. Then we really can't help you, because you need to have that come from you. And then we'll get you all the brand deals. We'll put you in a great position. We'll help you grow and analyze your stats. But if you don't have anything to analyze, like we really can't help you. And I think that's just, it's really important. I think people are used to seeing instant successes and, oh, someone's on Shark Tank, they make it big. It's like, no, all of that you're seeing is just the tip of an iceberg of like sometimes decades of work. And we're just, we're not seeing the whole story. So I really think that people should be more realistic in how long things are going to take and how much work things are going to take to really achieve the results you want. And don't get discouraged when it doesn't happen on like a instant timeline.
And don't give up your day job, right? Like,
yes, extremely, extremely important.
I don't think of myself as an influencer, but I'll shed some light into content creation, because overseeing 4 companies and I have staff in 6 countries and growing now, right? And so what I think about is what is the message that I can use to serve a group of people that I want to serve. And as a result, what the content looks like is, creating the show that is redeployed in terms of different, like, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, whatever. And then, the social media, I focused for years on growing my Facebook fan page. So it's like 650,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And then, now I'm very hyper focused on Instagram, which means I'm creating additional content that is just for Instagram every week. And then we're taking a snippet of the show and it goes on IGTV. And, my end game is, yeah, lovely. If someone pays me for it, I don't need the money from it. It's really about serving. And the thing that I would stand on my soapbox and say, if you have a desire to be an influencer, you better wake up and figure out how you want to serve, because if you're going to grow a big fan base, it's about serving them. And, are you in entertainment? Are you in edutainment? What are you there to do? Because you're going to create this group of people. And if you aren't constantly serving them, you're not going to be successful. Sorry, that was like a rant.
No, it's true. It's true though. I mean, people want connection, and you talk about engagement, and it's not just likes and comments. It's someone liking and commenting and like wanting to contribute to your story, wanting feedback as well. And you really have to be ready for that feedback loop, and you need to feed it in order to grow. And so that's even more time than I think people realize, but it's a key to success. A lot of influencers we work with, they're responding to every single comment.
Yep.
There might be a mean comment. They have to see it. They have to deal with it. That's takes extra time. So I think that's really important. And I think not quitting your day job until you are so sure in the amount of income you're going to have from this is really important. I think a lot of people think I just need to take the plunge and quit my job. It's like, I was working full time. I had a team of 5 people working in my apartment in New York City, and I was just managing them. They were doing my work for the full-time gig and also doing work for other clients. And I was on the phone pacing up and down the street outside of the office half the day until like my team and my clients were finally begging me, like, "Maybe you need to make this full time. Like, you have the revenue, we're ready to go. We have the clients. Like, this is actually what's holding us back now. You don't want to be in the position." But that took a good 6 months longer than I thought it would have if I had just quit on the day that I wanted to. And I might not have been able to get the company off the ground, so I'm a huge proponent and like almost overstaying your welcome in your full-time job until you get your side gig, like way ramped up in a very sustainable way.
That is the best advice. My final question for you, because I asked this for all the guests. So people look at you and they'll be like, dang, you're overseeing a company. We were joking before we started the episode, like one of your offices is in Paris. And I'm like, are you the coolest girl on the planet? Like, I have a Paris office. You're overseeing brands and influencers, a lot of personalities you deal with on a daily basis. What does your day look like?
So, I mean, it's a little different in COVID times, but I think that I've really been tweaking it a lot to make sure that I am as optimized as possible. So, I mean, I wake up relatively late, I think, compared to like every entrepreneur you hear is up at 6 or 5 a.m. I usually am up at 7:30 or 8. I'll do a workout. I'll walk around like a mile loop near my house with my husband, and we'll just talk through like, hey, what are we both going to accomplish today? I check in with my team. And I just have 4 things I need to do that day. And I make sure I'm pretty ruthless about my schedule too. So you got to come prepared if you're on my team with what you need, what the solution is, and how we move ahead. And we just bang through the day. And then I try to be done by 6 or 7. And then I'll get back on later, check in on emails. And if I need to have another call or talk to the West Coast or somewhere. But that's a pretty standard day. And it's a good balance by letting me stay super energized and really efficient and doing a good job while still getting as much done as possible.
I love it. It's outstanding. And there are some commonalities in almost 200 interviews that I've done in terms of successful founders. And there is that early rising thing. Not everyone is a 4:30 a.m. I am, weirdly, but I'm in bed by 9. But I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, so I got to check that box out.
West Coast, I would be up, and then I'd be off by 3:30, hiking somewhere. So that would be my schedule too.
Yeah, exactly. That's the benefits of the West Coast.
Totally.
And And there's the getting the workout in and checking in with the team, making sure people are hitting their KPIs. Those are all consistent across the board. And I think that, anyone listening to this or watching this who says, gosh, I would love to be an influencer in my niche, whatever that niche is, whether it's cooking or cars or RVs or whatever it is. Those are good principles to follow. And Mae, I can't thank you enough for being here. And if someone is watching or listening, and they want to connect, what is your best social that, you want people to follow you on?
So I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram as Maewow, Maewow. I'm not an influencer. I only work to make others great. So you can reach me there, but you won't be impressed with the giant following. And then you can reach me. My email is mae@obvious.ly as well.
Well, thank you so much, Mae, for being here. I learned so much. I wanted to take notes, but I've learned that this is a funny sidebar, but I'm not afraid to be like just me with my audience anyway. I learned that when I'm taking notes, it looks like I'm texting. So one of my team was like, it looks like you're texting. I'm like, no crap, I'm taking notes from all my guests.
You need like a feather, like a quill, like so people will see it in the Zoom call and be like, oh yeah, she's writing.
Then I had my mic. I had my podcasting mic is right here, and someone's like, well, it's like right in front of your face. So I'm like, yeah, okay. Anyway, totally. You can't win. Anyway, thank you so much, Mae, for being here. And if this episode has been helpful, we would love a 5-star review if you're on iTunes listening. Share it off of iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is. And like Mae talked about, I am the one who responds to all of your comments on social. So it's me. I don't have any of my team doing it. So if you want to drop a comment on how this episode blessed you, I'd love to see it. And with that, God bless. Go out there and rock your day. And I will see you on a future episode of the Susan Sly Project.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another epic episode of the Susan Sly Project. For more tips, strategies, and ideas, visit www.susansly.com.